Hey, what's up, Poozers? Welcome to the first episode of our new podcast slash show slash interview show. It's going to be a lot of things, but this is called The Lighthouse. And this is our first episode. I don't have a proper introduction yet. I'm still working on an intro theme song and a couple other things for this. But this interview kind of fell in our lap much quicker than I thought it was. And I'm very excited for that. So a big shout out to Gary again, who hooked this up between me and Jeremy. Jeremy Adams is the current writer on Green Lantern over at DC Comics. And the run has been amazing so far, and there's a lot of cool stuff coming up with Green Lantern Corps, which just launched. So we're going to talk about all those books. We're going to talk about his new exclusive contract with DC. So he's going to be writing these characters for some time, and I'm very excited for that. So buckle in. Thank you so much for being here for the first episode, and we'll have more stuff coming out very soon. We also have a short video that I put up that's kind of like a issue 0, if you will. It's like a prequel to this where I actually met Jeremy and Tim Sheridan, Philip Kennedy Johnson, all the current writers on Green Lantern books. So please check that out too. I'll put a link to it down below. But thank you for being here, and buy Jeremy's books. They're amazing. This Green Lantern run is so much fun. We're going to have a lot to talk about. Thank you again for hanging out with me at MegaCon and meeting me and Tim. And you guys are amazing, and I'm so glad I got to do this.
Yeah, no, listen, I love MegaCon. I had a great time.
Good.
I don't know if I had it. It was like the con was fun, but afterwards I was running around with some fun dudes. You know, it was really, really cool.
Yeah, I saw, because I saw you guys, like, you know, the parks and the stuff you guys did, and on your Instagram and stuff. I'm like, that's awesome. I mean, that's always cool to see people go have fun after work. Yeah. Well, I do, because I got a lot of cover, and I don't want to take up too much of your time, because I've actually been a fan of yours for over a decade now.
What?
Yeah, I just was telling Gary before this, and again, shout out to Gary for helping set this up. You worked on so many things that I've reviewed, and I've been on YouTube maybe since like 2012 or so.
Oh, cool.
And I've reviewed so much of you and Tim and so much of your stuff. So we'll get into it. You'll find out how much.
Okay.
You know, because IMDb, they list, I always like, when I do research, I'll check someone's IMDb, and they list you starting out as doing shorts like Call It Luck and Coming Together. And then obviously Green Lantern, the animated series, did a few episodes of that. And also the Scribblenauts Unmasking, which I played. So seeing like that as your start on IMDb, I know that all artists and writers begin before their first credited stuff. Yeah. So like, what is like something that you would consider an essential part of your secret origin of writing and getting into this world that you've entered in?
That's interesting. You know, because like, even when you said Call It Luck, it's like I was helping my friend's 48-hour film festival, you know. Awesome. It's just part of being in Los Angeles. This is a very good question. Like, what part of my secret origin story? Oh man, that's tough. Because it's like, it's such a string that you can pull sure. back, and like you're following along, and you know, when Jim Creed kind of took me under his wing, he asked me to do like I remember doing like a Brave and the Bold, just like a sample, like a spec script. And I remember him, he just wanted to see if I would do it. You know, that was such a big part of what he did. I will say that because Jim was pretty hard on me in terms of like giving me notes and stuff, but there was a moment where I was writing something, and I remember his total tenor changed, and it became less about trying to correct me and more about extolling me, you know, and there was this moment of like, my grammar wasn't perfect, but you know what? You're the fastest writer I've ever met in my life, you know, and like doubling down on things. I will say that what really changed my life in a lot of ways, like not Justice League Action, all that stuff, but when I did my first Lego DTV, which was a combination of doing it for Warner Brothers Animation, which was my first DTV for them, but it introduced me to Lego. And since then I have done countless movies and shorts and shows for them, which professionally really helped me out, you know, because once you get to a level where you can run a show, people look at you a little different. And it also showed Warner Brothers that, hey, he can do a feature-length DTV, which put me in a different category. And that was really amazing.
That's awesome. Well, I'm glad you brought up Lego, because I used to work for Lego.
Oh, yeah?
Yeah, for 5 years in Los Angeles. And
oh, wow. And we probably know all the same people.
I'm not. Yeah, for sure. I mean, like, I like Doc Wyatt, like those guys,
Oh
like
yeah.
who do the Ninjago stuff. Like, that's what I'm saying. Like, our paths have kind of, our ships have been in the same waters a bunch of times,
Oh, cool.
and it's so cool to just see this going through your IMDb and being like, dang, I've been here almost every step of the way along with this guy as a fan, and I'm
That's
like
cool.
piecing it all together, now at 43 years old. So it's cool though with DC and Lego. I want to talk about that because your animation listing is incredible. I mean, you have Batman Soul of the Dragon is still 100% Rotten Tomatoes,
Oh, that's
which
awesome.
which I remember when I got sent that to review. I must have watched it like 4 times. I was like, I don't want to sound dumb in this review.
Yeah,
I wanted to take it so seriously, which I did, and I love that movie.
I love it too.
But you did with the Lego DC stuff. You've worked on Flash, Aquaman, Shazam.
Yeah,
You did the Batman Family Matters, which I love so much. You've
yeah,
done Scooby Doo stuff.
yeah,
And big thanks to Gary and Brandon again, who got me to see a lot of those things either at little premieres or little
yeah,
events in LA. And then you've done Mortal Kombat, which I'm a huge
yeah.
fan of. You've done all those, which are all fantastic. I really love the Johnny Cage one too.
Yeah, me too.
So, so when you're starting a project like that, like where, I guess, like, what are some bullet points that you have that you give yourself to ensure that you're constantly doing your best work?
I really try to get in the mindset of play and having
Okay.
fun and like what's going to be fun. Like you just mentioned Johnny Cage, and Johnny Cage was so when I do a movie that is so very close to my vision of it, like Rick and I work really well together. Rick Morales and I
Mhm.
work really well together. So when we did Battle of Super Sons, Johnny Cage in particular,
Mhm.
those two felt like we got away with something.
Okay.
And that is the best feeling in the world because Johnny Cage for sure, like they should not have let me do. And but I was like, I just kind of like snuck it in and I felt like it was a gimme. Like, oh yeah, we'll just let him do this because he's done all these other ones. Because
Yeah.
it's preposterous. When you see it, you go, this is insane. Like I just wanted to do a Shane Black movie. That's like how ridiculous.
You
Oh,
nailed it.
you're gonna let me do a Shane Black movie? And with Super Sons, um, we had been pitching that for ages and they were like, no, theatrical is going to do it. And there was just one weird brief window where AT&T bought Warner Brothers and somebody said yes. And we hightailed it. We tried to get that thing done as quick as possible because we were convinced they were going to stop us. And the same thing with Scooby Natural. It was like, Jim and I just kept thinking like, they're going to stop us. There's no way they're going to let us do this. And when projects like that happen, it's exhilarating because you feel like you did get away with murder. And then there are other projects like Soul of the Dragon, for instance,
Mhm.
where Soul of the Dragon was, that's the first time I worked with Bruce Timm. And Jim had told me, he's like, by the way, you'll probably get fired. Like that was the first thing he told me. And Bruce and I really hit it off. And we had so much fun just talking about media and films and books and stuff. And like we'd have these like these 4-hour meetings that a half an hour of it would be about the movie. And but the thing that is that Bruce had such a high standard
Mhm.
and he would not settle for less. And that was really cool because maybe I was writing something that I just thought, whatever, and he would have an expectation for it to be better, and that really upped my game. So in terms of your question, like it's not that, oh, am I trying to be my best? It's like, am I having fun? Is
Okay.
this interesting to me? Like how can I make this fun to me? And sometimes, sometimes you ship a dog, as Marie Javen says, but
Yeah.
sometimes, sometimes I'll be like, gosh, that's boring. Why is that scene boring? How can I
Mhm.
fix it? How can I make it not boring?
Right.
Because I hate being boring. That's the worst to me. I can't tell you how many shows and movies I'm on my phone more than I am watching the program. And I hate it because but I'm also working, it's collaborative and I'm trying to juggle notes and ideas and make it all fit together. But like I said, when you get a project that you're just like, dude, I can't believe that. I can't believe they let us do that. It's such a great feeling. It really is.
That's awesome. And I have a question about collaboration later, because
Yeah.
you collaborate with some amazing people, and you've named some of them already. And
Yeah.
but one show I want to talk about big time is because I have a
Oh
supernatural,
yeah.
and I have the tattoos on my arm, and I have the mark of Cain over here. And
oh my gosh.
so like I'm a huge fan of that show, and
Same.
you've written 16 episodes of that. I was
No,
lucky.
I've only written 3.
Oh, okay. So
they,
IMDb is wrong on that.
So no, what happened? I'll just give you like what happens when you come on staff as a story editor, which is a level of writer. You get a story editor credit like on all those episodes, but they were very specific. Like I had done Scooby Natural with Jim. And they were like, holy, and by the way, I'm a huge Supernatural fan. So like from day one, I was watching it on the premiere and I was like, oh, this felt like a Stephen J. Cannell show. Like, those really cool syndicated programs. I freaking loved it. Yeah. And my buddy Andrew ended up getting a job on it season 4. I was so jealous. I took him out to Sizzler to celebrate.
Awesome.
And so he was on Supernatural season 4. And so when we did Scooby Natural, part of that was because I'm working at Warner Animation, and I asked Andrew, who's my friend, who they gave him the showrunning position on it, like, hey, would you want to do this? He's like, yeah, let's do it. And it was such a great time. And then he said, we want to put you on staff, but we don't want you to do anything with the overarching plot. We just want you to come up with weird ideas. I'm like, here's 10 weird ideas. And I remember going to Bob Singer and Andrew. I go, okay, here, I didn't know. This is my first foray into live action.
Okay.
And I said, I literally was like, great, here's 10 episodes. I'll go from least crazy to the craziest idea. And I said the first idea, and they go, well, that's too crazy. And I went, oh no. Like in my head, I was like, this is going to be a weird. And I literally pitched all 10, and they were all just like, by the 10th one, they were like, you're certifiable. Like they really thought I was nuts. And so I was able to just kind of pull out of my back pocket the one with Christian Kane, where they sing the Dukes of Hazzard theme song,
Yeah.
And because I knew that Jensen and Christian Kane were friends, I'm a huge Christian Kane fan, not just his music, but when he was an Angel in Leverage. And I was like, this is a Roadhouse episode. Like, this will be great, and they were totally down with it. And then after that, I did the Mrs. Butters episode where she was like a wood nymph that, did all these fun things. But, I had probably generated at least 26 crazy ideas. They were bananas. And they were great. I thought they were great. I was like, okay, well, you're not going to do that. I'll just put that in my back pocket for something else,
There you go. Well, I like that too, because they're like, all right, yeah, just come up with some weird stuff. And then you do, and they go, oh, okay, buddy. Well, that's just way too, yeah.
My last idea was so insane that I thought I was going to get fired, and I hadn't started. But to me, like, X-Files was obviously the first time I remember watching a show and seeing a show do some stuff that was so different.
Sure.
A Cops episode. I was like, what? This is insane, or Black and White episode, or all that stuff was so crazy. And it really opened my eyes to what you could kind of do in sort of a meta postmodern sense. And so, Buffy and Angel were those types of shows. And so Supernatural fell into that category. And I was very much like, hey, this is your last season. Like, swing for the fences. Let's do something insane. Why not? And they were like, no. They were like, no, that's crazy.
Yeah. That's great. I knew someone that worked on that show too, Adam Glass. I mentioned at Comic-Con or MegaCon, and I've oh man, like there's so many. That show is like so intertwined with my sense of being, really, because like I watched it all the way up, that in Smallville, all the way up to my brain aneurysm rupture, and then recovering from it, my rupture, and relearning to walk and talk. Like they were replaying Supernatural like on TNT every day, and I would rewatch the episodes and fell back in love with it. And so to me, like seeing again, going through I'm like, man, I've really, whether I knew his name or not, like he's been a part of all these things that I've loved. So it was cool to see, because I love that Scooby Natural episode. I love the Dean fighting so hard to keep Scooby pure, and like all that stuff was just so amazing. And so like with you, and that's cool that you said that you kind of out crazied, because they came up with some weird ideas for that show too.
Yeah, totally. I don't know. I don't know. I mean, I was going crazy. I mean, even the first time I pitched, and then it was like I got the second time to pitch.
Yeah.
And by this time I knew that people were only pitching like 2 episodes.
Yeah.
And I had written on my whiteboard. I mean, honestly, I had written at least 20 episodes, like ideas. And in big bold, I had one that said time traveling vampire ninjas. And I was like, yeah, hell yeah. And I remember one of the writers was like, what the F? And I went in to pitch with Davey Perez and we were both there, and he pitched his couple, and I just kept thinking like, don't pitch more than 2, pitch more than 2. And I pitched like 5, and they were bananas. And he's looking at me like, dude, you're crazy, because one of them, I even tried to pitch a Super Hulock episode that I was like, it was a big thing on Tumblr. And I remember Andrew was like, what, you want to pitch 2007 Tumblr? I'm like, listen, man, we can get David Tennant. I know somebody on DuckTales, and I was like, they're like, you're not going to get Cumberbatch. It's like, it doesn't matter. Johnny Lee Miller just quit, we can get him, and they were just like, you're stupid,
You're like, this is what you hired, guys.
Yeah, I mean, that was the job. In my mind, that was the job. And I'd rather swing,
That's the thing, is like a lot of times I tell this to people who want to get into writing and that stuff too, is I go, sometimes you only get that one shot.
Yeah.
And so you might as well go, like you said, you could have the mindset of, all right, I look at it this way, or I look at it from a business sense, or I look at it from a creative sense, or I want to have fun like you look at it.
Yeah.
And to you, you're like, hey man, if I'm going to do this job, I want to have like this kind of level of fun.
Yeah.
And that's awesome.
That's when I started writing on The Flash, that was why some of those issues are just really wacky, because it's like, I just thought for sure they were going to fire me. Like I really was. And
you're like, I'm going to do it anyway. And then they fired me after.
I'm just going to do something weird and see, they were game, and
then 35 issues later. I mean, exactly. I mean, that's good though. I mean, that's a long run in modern comics too, a lot of times. So, and I want to talk about that run too, because you've done some great stuff. Like you said, 35 issues of Flash, you've relaunched Aquaman and Green Lantern now. I mean, doing this comic book stuff, like, and having this, new contract with DC where you're exclusive to them. I mean, when I saw that, I flipped out, because of course, like as someone who just appreciates really good writing and people who take swings and whether they, hit a home run or not, it doesn't matter. I always see it as people trying their best, and even though you see it as like, oh, I'm just having fun. But to me, I'm like, yeah, but that's his best, is when he's having fun.
Yeah.
So to me, knowing you have all this at your disposal now, all these opportunities that might pop up, I guess I'm just curious, with a contract like this, are you going to use those opportunities for good or evil?
I mean, good. I'm
of course.
I'm such a hopeful guy, and to me, my favorite comics are the ones that are just, there's an underlying thread of hope and fun and joy and adventure, and like I like that stuff. That's the stuff that that's the stuff that makes me mad about like Luke Skywalker. Like I'm like, no, he's good.
The eternal optimist he is. Like
and so those were my heroes growing up, and not evil. Like I love partaking in this universe and getting to do stuff. And I'm not an edgy guy. Like I'm not the guy that's like,
no, I mean, but I would say you still take chances though.
I do. Yeah. I try to pull at heartstrings and stuff. And there are moments, but I want to entertain and make things interesting. And I honestly, part of it is self-doubt and self-loathing. It's like, I don't take myself particularly too seriously. And I really am centered around being like, I really do believe I'm humbled by the opportunity and people's faith in me. And I don't want to let people down, you know, and I hate it when I do. And a lot of times that, like, even when I let down fans on something, it's usually because I just, you know, I didn't know that piece of continuity I probably should have known, you know, or
Yeah.
something. And it's not my job to make people happy, and I get it, but
Yeah.
I'm geared more toward, I want people to enjoy the books. I want them to enjoy the movies. I want them to come out. Like you said, I want them to associate my name with quality and go, gosh, he's the guy that's like he's trying to make it good. Like, I
Yeah.
really am. I'm not ever trying to make it bad, you know?
No.
And so when it does turn bad, I'm like, I'm more angry about it than everybody else, you know?
Yeah, for sure. I mean, I think that comes with a lot of writers. Like I used to hang out with Dan Harmon a lot, and he would tell
Yeah.
me like
Wow. Yeah.
how visceral writing of experience was for him, and that's why it is for me. Like that's why my output and stuff is very rare. Like I don't put stuff out consistently. I can do stuff like I'm a short story guy or a annual issue guy. You know, like I'm not a ton of. I don't do like long runs because it's just the amount it takes out of me to put myself in the shoes of some of the characters or the emotional state. So the way you do it is so good and it's very uplifting. And I got to say, like on Green Lantern, because I want to get to that for sure before I lose you. Like the Green Lantern run you're doing right now is probably my favorite since Jeff's.
No.
And I loved like the Venditti stuff, and I loved even Grant stuff. Like I liked a lot of the Green Lantern stuff that's in Thorne, who did the recent run. So
Yeah.
like I love all of those guys, and they've done great stuff. But from the moment I started reading yours, that's why I bought the script at
Oh, cool.
MegaCon,
Yeah.
and you signed it for me because I was just like, I I cannot believe how much I empathize or connect with Hal in
Yeah.
this run. So like on Green Lantern, you know, you begin this run in somewhat familiar territory with like for long-term readers, at least you have Hal who's back after being gone for a long time. A lot of long-term readers have seen that version of Hal before, where he's coming back, he's trying to put his life together. But this time you're also introducing like new types of Hal, you know, ways the GL rings work, a new GL ring kind of. You
Yeah.
got the way power sources and where they can recharge from, the rules of where GLs can and can't operate, you know. Like you have a lot of cool new stuff that's being brought in that was set up maybe some of it previously, but then some of it you brought in. So what made this feel like the logical place to kind of begin your story for Hal?
You know, part of it was like they wanted to go in a new creative direction with Flash, and
Mm-hmm.
so, you know, part of my sobbing tears, you know, they were like, hey, but we want you to do Green Lantern. And I honestly, I didn't, it was very intimidating. And I called Jeff Johns, and he was incredibly supportive about it. He pumped me up about it. And part of, even with Aquaman, like I'm really looking at who they are as humans. Like I'm trying to figure out their internal thought life, and what is this guy about? How was he raised? Like I'm really interested in that. I do that a lot in a lot of characters, just like, how were they raised? Like what is this? Because they often don't explore that, you know.
True.
But with Paul, my editor at the time, said, hey, we want it to be kind of a grounded earth thing. And I had a pitch when I got pulled in for 5G about Earth being quarantined and some stuff that fit that thing, and it helped ground it. But it also, you know, I just thought, how much money does this guy have in his bank account? Like he's probably got like $10.
Yeah,
You
nothing.
know, yeah, he's such a sad sap, and he's always going out and doing this stuff, and I just thought that was really interesting, and I just thought him as a person. And in DC Comics, it was interesting because that was the moment where all the eyes turned to legacy characters like Nightwing and Titans and
Mm-hmm.
Wally and all that stuff, and the families. And here's a guy that's not one of those people. And he, you know, I have this issue where him and Barry are talking about it and like watching these kids that they grew up with are like grown up.
Mm-hmm.
And what does that mean for them? And so it is kind of this strange maturation of Hal. And you know, it also came to, everybody was telling me how much they hate Hal. Like, I can't tell you how many fans were just like, I hate Hal. I hate him. I hate him. And I was like, well, then my job is to make you like him, you know,
Yeah.
and how do we like him? And, I was watching Bull Durham, and I was just thinking about Kevin
Great,
Costner,
great movie.
yeah, and how
Yeah.
unbelievably charismatic. And I was like, that's who Hal is. Hal is Kevin Costner and Bull Durham, man.
Yeah. Yeah.
And I and that kind of struck me, and it was really fun to kind of see him come back into Carol's life and see that drama start to unspool, but all this other stuff start taking place. And the Green Lantern mythology is massive, so I was trying to design it in a way that I could get a hold of it, that I could retell some of that stuff in a simple fashion for somebody as stupid as me, so it was really fun. And then of course I'm a huge nerd, so I'm like making Millennium Easter eggs, and
Yeah.
you
I know.
the whole stuff with Kilowog not being there, like all that stuff is really fun and interesting.
I want to touch on it too. Like, so for those out there who for some reason have not been reading this run, I can't encourage you enough. Between this, the Alan Scott book by Tim Sheridan, the John Stewart book right now by Kenny Johnson, like this is some, like I said, the best Green Lantern stuff I've seen consistently since the Jeff run. And now that you're bringing Core in, you have Morgan writing with you. Like, so Green Lantern Back in Action and Love and War, the first two trades that are out there now, you guys got to pick them up. In this, you not only bring back a new focus on the emotional spectrum, which when you said Hope earlier, I can't wait to see if you do anything with Blue Lanterns, or more, I guess, with Blue Lanterns. But especially, with Sinestro in issue 5, he did a really cool thing with him, rebuilding the friendships with Barry Allen, like you said, which I love that whole sequence. Normally, it's always tough, like writing people talking and making it interesting, but I really like that conversation where it's like, you gave them a real conversation. Hey, we're two older guys, and we watched all these great kids become amazing superheroes. And I loved that conversation. I love the heartbreak in a way with Carol, and that he's like, you really love her, don't you? And he's like, I do, but I want her to be happy. So, I got to let her, I got to move on. And I'm like, God, that's so good. And then, man, Razor and Kilowog in almost like a page apart from each other, the reveal of Razor being there, and then the twist on Kill. So I've, as many people have, with grief, dealing with it, and all I kept thinking was, and Philip Kenny Johnson did this in his John Stewart run too, where for a moment he kind of brings someone back, with the ring, and I'm like, I feel like when I'm sad, I would do that, if I had a Green Lantern ring. So when I saw that this whole time he's been having beers with Kilowog and what you reveal, I was like, God damn, I mean, Taga, you said you pull at heartstrings, man. Amazing, great first graphic novel there with that first volume. So like, is there anything, because you mentioned Millennium stuff, like anything you set up in maybe those first two trades without maybe spoiling too much that fans might want to keep in mind with some of the upcoming stories you have?
Well, I mean, yes. I mean, obviously the Sorrow stuff. I don't know. Is the Sorrow stuff in the second one? Or at least, Nathan.
Well, it starts coming a little after, so that's fine. Yeah.
So the Razor stuff, I got to pay that off at some point. And all of it is setting the stage for kind of an internal event that Morgan and I are working on for the summer. And that is, trying to, again, I'm trying to bring it back. Like, I remember when I got the book and they said, Jeff Thorne had done this really kind of high-minded epic sci-fi story, but there was a lot of loose threads left at the end. And I remember I had somebody just write a paragraph that everything went back to normal. I'm like, I am a nerd. I cannot do that, but I'm a very yes and person. So it's like, I took those threads and tried to make a story, and whether or not I succeeded, I don't know. But the fact is that Green Lantern Corps, especially, it's like, I want Green Lantern books to be the place you go to find out what's happening in space in DC Universe. Like, it's not just going to be, sometimes Green Lantern books, at least when I was reading them, they can get very siloed in, it's just about Green Lantern. And I want Space Cabbie and Omega Men and like Thanagar and Ran and all that stuff. I want that all to be part of the kind of like mosaic of Green Lantern. And sometimes I succeed, sometimes I don't. But that's a big part of the mission statement for the next section of those two books.
Awesome. Well, and real quick, as we get to our last question, right before that, I want to mention that, this idea, like how of, being like this middle-aged guy, this hero, trying to not really find his purpose, but I guess like you said, he's a guy that doesn't really plan long term sometimes, and he's just kind of like lives moment to moment, and that ends up as how he's on Earth, living in a trailer home with no money in account, and you have all these great things with him, but he stood up to his bosses, which anyone who's ever done that,
Yeah.
that's not easy. And so I kind of found that relatable. Like, yeah, I've had bosses where you want to do the right thing and stand up for you and your team, and there's a fear there of like getting fired or all these things, and Hal did it anyway, and I kind of like that Hal is this kind of guy. So, and all while dealing with grief that we find out, so you sit there, it's sitting there. I made me think of how strong is this guy? Like he's like an old, like you said, he's like a Bull Durham, an old school guy. Like he internalizes a lot of times how he really feels. And with like, because you see that everything seems normal with the Kilowog stuff until issue 6. And then you realize all these moments that he had with Carol, if he raised his voice or if he did this or he stood up for something, you understand his mentality. And so like, I just want to say, as someone who has gone through similar things, like it made me love Hal, and I already loved Hal.
That's
so
right.
I hope it's turned other people to give Hal a shot. And I want to say for my last question, you mentioned earlier, Green Lantern Corps issue 1 is out now, guys. Number 2 is coming out soon, so please pick it up. So my last question is, working with Morgan now on this book on Green Lantern Corps. I love seeing Sinestro and like what role he's in again. I don't want to spoil it, but it's amazing. It makes things very interesting. But my question is, in whether it's with some of the great artists that you work on, like on Green Lantern and other books, the art's kill. I mean, every book you guys are doing, the art's amazing.
I'm so lucky.
I can't imagine waking up and getting a page and being like, what? But from that to co-writers like Morgan, to editors, letterers, and even colorists. I mean, I imagine you collaborate with everyone. What are some lessons or a lesson that you've taken away recently that in that collaboration process? Because you mentioned the Jim Krieg one earlier, but something that came at you in comics that you're like, oh, this will make me approach something different next time.
It's mostly about like, I really try to find out what the artists want to draw. Awesome. I want them to be excited about it. Like, and I am happy. Like, I am not precious about my words at all. I would much rather cut them down to make room for the art. Because that's what I was like reading, if the book didn't look good, I probably wouldn't read it, It's like, I would just be like, but I understand that like any success I have is really predicated on the fact that I had amazing collaborators to work with. Fernando Passarin is a huge part of my career, and Will Conrad and Zermanico on Green Lantern. He's just a next level human being in terms of his skill. It's so cinematic. It's so awesome. I'm constantly afraid somebody's going to steal him,
I would be too. I mean, because he's good at the epic stuff, and all these guys are, but they're also good at the intimate stuff.
So what you're saying is like, in animation you write toward the artist, but a lot of times I don't know who those storyboard guys are going to be, but with this I know who the guy is, and I can write him and be like, dude, what do you want to draw? Like, I want you to be pumped about this, and finding out what they're really good at and what they really like or what they want to try. Like, I am 100% open to it because it helps me out. I can formulate a story. If Zermanico wants to do, and he was like, he wants to do jets and mechs. I was like, great, let's do a big mech battle. This is going to be awesome, and that makes me so excited. And, like the entrance to the central power battery on Earth was in his hometown, and like, I love that. I love that so much. And Fernando, he's another one that, I beg him, like, what do you want? And he's just like, whatever you want. And then he does 110% on every panel. John Timms is another guy that he's so good, but I find myself just really an attitude of gratitude because I'm very grateful that I get to work with these guys. When Kevin McGuire, I've done a couple things with him now, and it's like, that's the top, man.
Yeah,
Like
right.
for me, it's like I get to work with my heroes, the guys that made me laugh and really informed a huge portion of my imagination in comics. So it's heady stuff. Like
Yeah.
you know, it's like I'm very well aware, and again, that feeling of like they're going to kick me out. It doesn't even matter if I have an exclusive contract. I'm just like, yeah, well, maybe. You
Yeah.
know, it's like, yeah, no, you signed it. It's like, yeah, but they could
Yeah, they
still
can
kick
pull the
me
plug.
out.
Yeah,
Yeah,
exactly. Well, hopefully now it'll be harder for them to do that with this contract you have, and I think the faith is there. Like they know you do good work. That's why they offered you this contract. I'm sure your output is amazing. The
thank
stuff
you.
you're doing with every character, whether you feel like you're striking out or not, or if you're listening to certain people you talk to, or like, and whether you take their feedback to account or not. Like I think consistently you do amazing work, and you made me re-love the DC universe in a way that I've always been a fan, but I haven't loved it on this level in a while.
Oh,
And
thanks,
seeing
man.
you and Josh Williams and Tim Sheridan, a lot of these people that are doing stuff now, and I got to meet Snyder at
Yeah,
at MegaCon 2, and Greg Capullo, and like Absolute Batman. Like everything is just firing on all cylinders.
yeah.
And I'm grateful that you are part of this group of people that are making that happen.
Thanks, man.
Please keep up the good work. I don't want to
Thank
go
you.
over my time with you. I could talk to you for generations, I'm sure.
Yeah, yeah,
But
totally.
I will keep reading your books. I will on this show. You are the first interview on this new podcast that I'm doing.
Sweet.
So and it's called The Lighthouse. So thank you all for watching, and it is all focused on Green Lantern. So we will be talking about you for years to come, I'm sure.
All right, good. I like to hear that.
Awesome. And everyone else out there, thank you guys. Is there anything you can plug, anything you would like to plug before we go?
No, I got stuff coming out, but I'll announce it sometime. You know.
Awesome. And then follow him on social media, guys, because I love your videos where you post where you get your comps in.
Oh my gosh. Yeah.
And it's like, yeah, and you and your kids are talking and stuff. It's super awesome to see, that side of you too. You seem like a great guy, and I see it in your work too. So thank you.
Thank you so much.
You're welcome, man. You take care, and everyone out there, thanks so much for watching. Like, share, subscribe, all that fun stuff, and we'll see you in the future. Peace.